So, Grand Rising, beloveds. I'm Dr. Alice Reid, and I'm the spiritual director here at Center for Spiritual Living, Capistrano Valley. And we are indeed in spring. Spring has sprung. The grass has riz. I wonder where the birdies is. That's an old T.S. Eliot poem. I remember reading that as a child. Well, I'm really excited about today. Today marks our annual meeting of the membership. This is, I hope that you'll stick around for this. We have some really amazing things to share with you about what's happening with our center. There's a lot of movement happening. And we are working with this beautiful annual theme, Rising Higher, Growing Deeper. Rising Higher, Growing Deeper. And I think about the mighty oak tree, right? Its roots are as deep as its limbs are high. And so as below, so above. As above, so below. And that mighty oak can withstand any storm, anything that comes at it. It has just enough flexibility to move with whatever's happening and stands tall because it grows its roots so deeply. And this month, we're looking at the flow of coming and going, the flow of coming and going. And there's certainly a lot of things flowing. I'm certainly experiencing it. And so we've talked about this a little bit this month. There's that opportunity for us to really go with the flow and keep ourselves grounded and recognize where we're rooted when we are feeling a little unsure of ourselves. And today, we're talking about planting my intentions. Planting my intentions. So I was doing a little gardening yesterday. You know, that we had all this rain, right? And so I had extra work to do because of all the rain. And when I moved here a little over 3 years ago, I purchased this little home with a rose garden. And I have never really worked with roses. It's my first time. And I spent 45 years of my life, and I learned to garden on the East Coast. Zone 5 or 6. And if you understand the difference, we're like zone 10 or 11 here. So it's a really different environment for me. And I read up on roses, you know, because I wanted to make sure that they were well cared for and that I could enjoy them every year. And so according to the instructions that I read, you have to cut them back by at least a third. And my roses really got out of hand, and I didn't take very good care of them last year, and so I actually cut them back a little further. I really pruned them. And I've been looking out at my yard at the barren wood and thinking, oh my God, did I screw up? Did I cut them back too much? And when I was out in the garden yesterday, I noticed they were just thriving. There was all kinds of new growth, and they were really leafing out. And I was thinking about that as a kind of a metaphor for this thing that we call the creative process that we work with in this philosophy, that we plant our seeds and then we just have to trust. We have to trust that whatever is going to happen is going to happen. We have to do our part. I had to prune those babies back. But at the same time, we have to trust that something wonderful is going to happen. And that's what happens every year in spring, right? Things die back. From the East Coast, it really dies back. But, you know, we have to just let the things fall away that need to fall away so that we can make room for new growth. And I think that's just the cycle of change that we're working with. You get to be in a certain place in your life. You begin to recognize that cycle as it comes round again, right? It's like a spiral that we're always on, and it's forever. We'll come back to this place of cutting things back and then having them grow again. And I am the proud owner of about 1,500 books. And for me, they are like old friends, and I continue like I'm buying a book later today. Can't have enough. And so what happens for me with my library is that oftentimes the perfect book will come about to help ground me, to help center me, to help me come to some new inspiration for whatever's going on. And so I found this book in our little beach bookstore in San Clemente by Catherine May, and the title is Enchantment, Awakening Wonder in an Anxious Age. And there was this beautiful quote in there that just really hit home for me, and I want to share it with you. She writes, "The last decade has filled so many of us with a growing sense of unreality. We seem trapped in a grind of constant change without ever getting a chance to integrate it." Without ever getting a chance to integrate it. And that's sometimes how change feels, especially now. There's a lot of change happening right now. And as I say that, I feel like I've been saying that a lot, like for the last 10 years. I feel like, there's a lot of change now. There is a lot of change that's happening, and change is happening rapidly. And yet, just like the seasons, there is some kind of pattern and order to that change, and sometimes we can't quite see it. Sometimes we aren't quite aware of it. I've realized as I was preparing this morning's message, and as I was thinking about this idea of going through so much change and needing some time to integrate it, I started to reflect on the last 10 years of my life. It's a long list. I might have to read it. There's so much has happened in the last 10 years. In the last 10 years, I've ended a 30-year marriage. I sold a business that I had grown. I changed jobs 3 times. I moved across the country. I moved from Northern California to Southern California. I sold a home. I bought 2 homes. And then I sold my portion of one of those homes to a man I was in relationship. It was a beautiful relationship for 5 years. I have found myself, I weathered a worldwide pandemic. How about you? Yeah, a worldwide pandemic. I welcomed my 5th grandchild in the last 10 years. I lost both my parents. I found myself living alone for the first time in my life at the age of 60. Yeah. And I helped lead an international organization. It's a lot of shift. It's a lot to integrate, right? And now we're going to move a community. This community, if you're here for the first time, we have been in this building for 13 years, and we have sold it. We've earned a nice depreciation on this building, and we're going to be in transition for a little while. And all of that change that laundry list of things that I've been through, within all of that, I was grounded by my intentions. That it was my intentions that kept me in a centered place. And I would revisit those intentions from time to time as the landscape changed, as I moved across the country, as I switched jobs, as I changed relationships. I would have to revisit those intentions, but it was the intentions that kept me grounded. We subscribe in this philosophy to this way of manifestation that we call the creative process. And Ernest Holmes, the founder of this movement, Centers for Spiritual Living and Science and Mind Philosophy, talked about the creative process as the seed, the soil, and the plant. And that we plant a seed in the soil of the universal mind, and then it comes about. Everything is created twice. First in consciousness, and then in form. And I have to remember that when I'm weathering the form. when things are happening around me that I'm really excited and happy about, and things that I'm not so happy about. Reminds me of that story of the farmer who had a son who was helping him with his farm, and the son was working with the horses one day, and you know the story, you're going to help me with it. And one day the son was working with the horses, and the fence fell down, and the horses got away, and the neighbors came and, oh my God, your horses are gone. The man simply said, I don't know if it's good, and I don't know if it's bad. It's a story that's well-worn, but he goes on, his son goes, he goes to find the horses, he finds a bunch more horses, he brings them all back to the farm, and the neighbors come by and they say, oh my God, it's so amazing, look, you have this amazing herd now. The man simply says, it's good. Right. The son begins to break some of the horses. Oh, look, the creative process is up. Look at you, Mary. The son begins to try to manage some of the horses, and he falls and breaks his leg, and the townspeople gather again. They're all in a tizzy. Oh, my God, this is terrible. Who will help you with all these horses? Right. And then finally, the area, the country that they live in goes into war, and the government comes through, and they round up all the able-bodied young men, but his son, of course, has a broken leg. And they say, oh my God, you're so lucky, you're so fortunate, your son didn't get called to war. And of course, he says, I don't know if it's good, and I don't know if it's bad. Right. And of course, the moral of that story is that change keeps coming. Change keeps happening. Things keep falling apart. Things keep getting better. There is a constant movement of spirit through our lives. And it's where we locate ourselves that helps us weather it. So my second source of inspiration for today's talk came from Neville Goddard. Familiar with him, anyone? Yeah, amazing mystic. And in Your Faith is Your Fortune, he writes, the power of conceiving and the thing conceived are one power, but the power to conceive is greater than conception. The power of conceiving and the thing conceived are one, but the power to conceive is greater than conception. He goes on to say that the power conceiving itself to be humanity is greater than its conception, and all conceptions are, if limited at all, are limited by the conceiver. Right? And so what he's trying to tell us is that form is the lesser, and yet it's equal, right? It's the lesser, but it's equal. And the only reason it's lesser is because it has to take form. Neville is reminding us that everything is created in consciousness, and that is where our real power lies. And so when you are working with your intentions, when you are grounding yourself in consciousness, when you are carefully cultivating the thoughts and the things that you want to create, you're working with real potent power. And the thing that comes about, that whatever it is that happens to be created out of those intentions, they'll change eventually. They might get a little better, they might get a little worse, they might get a little bigger, they might get, we'll have our judgments around them. But the true power in all form is consciousness. And we harness that consciousness with our intentions. We plant those seeds. And then we nourish them. We cultivate them. I mean, if you're not a gardener, I'm sorry. I love this metaphor for creation because it really is how we work with consciousness. We cultivate that soil. The soil is like our mind, our thoughts, the things that we feed ourselves, the things that we think. And this is the important part. Cultivating our thoughts is not pretending everything's all right. There's a distinct difference between holding on to an intention and being with what is and trusting the outcome. And sometimes what is very discombobulating. This community is about to be very discombobulated. We will begin meeting in a new place on Easter Sunday, April 20th. You won't be, your favorite chair, not there. The coffee, the way you get your coffee, gonna be different. What you see up on the platform, gonna be a little different. All of this is gonna change. And I kind of know it's good. You know, I don't know. I'm not going to say I don't know if it's bad or I don't know if it's good. I kind of know it's good. And we're going to talk a lot more about that at the annual meeting this afternoon that starts at 12. And I invite you to stick around for that because I think there's just so much promise in this opportunity that we're stepping into. And it might look like we are really pruning that community back. It might look like we're really cutting it back. But that's so that we can create new growth. And we're going to lean into some new ways of being. We're going to cohabitate with another spiritual community. We're going to find out some new things about paths to their spiritual practices and pathways to God and to that oneness. And it is going to be a fabulous opportunity for us. The thing that I notice happening for me is that sometimes I get afraid when change happens. And just me, right? No, that doesn't happen for any of you. Just me. I get a little afraid when change happens. And I have some go-to behaviors that help me to feel safe. And one of them is to shut down and withdraw and isolate. Because if I'm out in the world and a lot is happening, if I can make my world a little smaller, feel a little more in control, right? That's very comforting. But now is not the time to isolate. Now is the time to reach out, to be with other people, to be in greater community, to embrace differences. And our spiritual practice is the thing that's going to bring us home every time in the midst of change, in the midst of things that feel like they're upended. I was, as I said, 45 years on the East Coast in Baltimore, and I was thinking about all the change that's happening, not just in our community, but in our culture and in our world. And I was thinking about hurricanes. Now, you all on the East Coast haven't had the experience with hurricanes that I have on the West Coast that I have on the East Coast. But let me tell you a little bit about hurricanes. When they come through, man, the wind kicks up, and anything that's not nailed down just gets flown away. The rain goes sideways. You're not sure what direction you're going in, and that storm comes through. You can actually see it moving, like as it moves through your environment. And then something will happen and everything will get still. It's the eye of the hurricane. It's the central place where everything is amiss around you. But in that center of the hurricane, it is completely calm. And our spiritual practice is like stepping into the eye of the hurricane. It's like coming to a place where we know where we're directed. We know where our compass points are. We know our true north. We come back to a place of standing in power, in that place where we conceive with and co-create, where consciousness helps guide us. So my invitation to you this week, this month, because it starts today. It all starts today. This community is actively stepping into change March 23rd, 2025. And we start with our annual meeting. Of course, it's perfect to start on the equinox when we're not quite sure what the bud's going to look like when it comes out of the tight bud. We're not quite sure what things are going to look like, but we know we can feel some growth. That's what's happening here for us in this community. And individually, we will blossom, and collectively, we will blossom. We will meet new friends. We will explore new places. We'll try some new things, and we'll bring some of the good stuff with us. And we have this beautiful philosophy that we will always draw upon. We'll have this amazing music team that joins us wherever we go. Now is the time for us to consciously step into change. And I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. And that favor is to give each other a lot of grace. Give each other a whole lot of grace as we move through change. I have moved 15 or 16 times in my life. And every time I've done it, it never gets fun. It never gets easier. It's always discombobulating. There's always things I can't find. There's always things that get broken. There's always things I have to leave behind. But I can tell you that once I get rooted, it's always good. Almost 4 years later, I drive around Southern California, and I just am in awe of where I live. And I am grateful for my friends and the connections that I've made. Didn't feel like that at first. And I will tell you, I brought my little purple book. It's a book I've been writing intentions in for the last, 10 or 12 years. And I brought it because it helps anchor me. It's actually been on the shelf for a little while. And I brought it out because it reminds me as I go back and I look at all the different intentions that I've made over the last 10 years, that there is a constant thread through them. The conditions change, but spirit is consistent. And so as we move through this time, this season of change, I invite you to ground yourself in spiritual practice, to set your intentions. Join us for visioning on Tuesday mornings on Zoom. We've been doing that for 6 months, longer. Yeah, longer. We vision every Tuesday morning, and that grounds us in midair. It reminds us where everything comes from. And that's the reminder today. Anchor yourself in spirit. Your roots are deep. You can weather this change. Thank you very much. And one of our grounding practices, as Jackie Simone so beautifully sang in her song, is prayer. We pray, and we pray again, and that reminds us of who we are, or as Kathy likes to say, whose we are. And so let's do that now. And so if you'll join me. Just lowering your gaze or closing your eyes if you're comfortable. And let's just take a deep breath together. And let's do that one more time. Recognizing that the breath we take is not our own. It is the same breath that is taken by your loved ones or your perceived challengers, people that you have difficulties with. We all breathe the same air. It is the lifeblood of our existence. And it reminds us of the unseen and the invisible, the power and the presence of the thing that makes the grass grow and the roses bloom and new growth happen. And so as we connect ourselves to this inner awareness we can never be separate from, we can never be isolated from. I know that for each one, we are deeply rooted in love. We are deeply rooted in spirit. We are deeply rooted in compassion and grace. And so these are the things that feed us as we move through change. That we surrender and surrender and surrender again, knowing that the power and the presence of that one life, that one power, that is so many things to so many people, is exactly who we are. And we simply hand over this beautiful community. We hand over our lives, knowing that it is God's life. For there is only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect. And that life is our life now. So it is with gratitude that we know that highest truth. And we come back to it again and again and again, because it is truth. And grounded in this lovely and powerful truth, we simply give thanks as we say together, and so it is. Thank you.